Canada paid $6.4 billion to build a bridge connecting Detroit to Windsor. Michigan contributed $0. In exchange for that $0 investment, Michigan received 50% ownership of the finished bridge plus 50% of all future toll revenues forever. American steel was used in construction. American workers built the Michigan approach. The 2012 agreement making all of this official has been public for 14 years. Donald Trump looked at that arrangement and threatened to block the bridge from opening unless Canada compensated the United States. Mark Carney picked up the phone the next morning and delivered 4 sentences that ended the confrontation before Washington could escalate it. Canada paid. Michigan already owns half. American steel and American workers built it, and I look forward to its opening. No emergency cabinet meeting, no counter-tariff threat, no diplomatic crisis. Just 4 facts delivered to a president whose Truth Social post had gotten nearly every detail about the bridge wrong. But here's what makes this story extraordinary. Trump did not just threaten infrastructure Canada built. He threatened infrastructure his own administration endorsed in 2017, funded with $15 million in 2019, and called vital to both economies. Michigan's Republican former governor who negotiated the original agreement published a column in the Detroit News, fact-checking Trump's claims line by line. Michigan's current Democratic governor defended the bridge. Michigan's senator defended it. Michigan's business community defended it. The state Trump cannot afford to lose in 2028 told him he was wrong about a project in their state that their workers built and their economy depends on. Today, we're showing you why Trump targeted this specific bridge as leverage, what he actually got wrong about who owns it and who paid for it, who the real winner of a blockade would be, and why Michigan Republicans named them publicly, why Carney's 4-sentence response was strategically perfect, and how a $6.4 billion infrastructure project that gives Michigan half ownership for free became the moment a president's own party in a swing state refused to follow him into a trade war. But before we dive into this story, if you appreciate in-depth analysis like this, hit that like button and subscribe to stay informed on the stories that truly matter. Let's start with what Trump actually posted. On February 9th, 2026, Trump wrote on Truth Social that Canada owns both sides of the Gordie Howe International Bridge, that it was built with virtually no United States content, and that the United States must be compensated before the bridge can open. He named 3 grievances that motivated the threat. Ontario's provincial government had run television advertisements criticizing American tariffs. Ontario had banned American alcoholic beverages from provincial store shelves in retaliation for Trump's tariff campaign. And Prime Minister Mark Carney had just returned from Beijing with a trade agreement that cut tariffs on Canadian canola from 85% to 15% and opened $7 billion in new export markets with China. Washington called that agreement hostile. Trump's post made clear the bridge was not the issue. The bridge was leverage. A $6.4 billion Canadian infrastructure project sitting on the border, needing federal approval to operate, waiting for an opening date. Trump looked at that asset and saw something he could threaten to extract concessions on alcohol bans, dairy protections, and deals with Beijing. The problem is that every major factual claim in that post was wrong. The 2012 Canada-Michigan crossing agreement is public. It has been public for 14 years. Canada pays for all construction. Michigan contributes nothing. In exchange, Michigan receives joint ownership of the finished bridge, half the bridge, for free. After Canada recoups its construction costs through tolls, Michigan becomes eligible to receive 50% of all net toll revenues going forward. The state of Michigan receives a share of billions in future revenue from an infrastructure project it funded with $0. That agreement was signed by Michigan's Republican governor, Rick Snyder. It was reviewed and approved by the United States Department of State, which issued the presidential permit in 2013. It was endorsed by Trump himself in 2017 in a joint statement with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, calling the bridge a vital economic link. Trump's administration had then signed $15 million in United States customs funding for the bridge into law in December 2019. So when Trump claimed Canada owns both sides, he contradicted a 2012 public agreement giving Michigan 50% ownership, a 2013 State Department permit his own department issued, a 2017 joint statement he personally signed, and a 2019 funding law his administration passed. When Trump claimed virtually no United States content was used, he ignored that American steel was used on the Michigan approach, and American workers built the United States side. When Trump claimed the United States must be compensated, he ignored that Michigan was already compensated with 50% ownership and future revenue rights without investing a single dollar. Carney called Trump the following morning. The call was direct. Canada paid $6.4 billion. Michigan and Canada share ownership under the 2012 agreement. Canadian and American steel were both used. Canadian and American workers both built it. Then Carney walked out to Parliament Hill and told reporters he had explained to Trump that this is a great example of cooperation between the two countries, that he looks forward to its opening, and that he had asked United States Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, who is from Michigan and understands what the bridge means to his home state, to help smooth the conversation going forward. 4 facts. 1 diplomatic assignment. No escalation. Here's where it gets fascinating. There is exactly one party that benefits from every day the Gordie Howe Bridge stays closed. Not Canada, not Michigan, not the United States federal government, the Maroun family of Detroit. In 1979, Manuel Matty Maroun acquired the Ambassador Bridge, the existing crossing between Detroit and Windsor. One man, one bridge, a near total monopoly on heavy commercial truck traffic between the two countries. The tunnel connecting Windsor and Detroit prohibits commercial trucks, so every 18-wheeler carrying auto parts, agricultural products, and manufactured goods crossing the Detroit River has paid tolls to the Maroun family for 47 years, more than $60 million annually, for 4 decades. When Canada began planning a public replacement bridge, Maroun understood the threat immediately. He spent the next 20 years fighting it with everything available. $30 million on a Michigan ballot initiative requiring voter approval for new bridge construction. It failed. 60% voted against. Multiple federal lawsuits claiming exclusive rights to any Detroit-Windsor crossing. Lost every case, including a Supreme Court challenge the justices refused to hear. Television advertisements on the Fox and Friends during Trump's first term directly asking the president to cancel the project. Trump did not cancel it. His administration funded it and called it vital. But here's the detail that Rick Snyder named directly in his Detroit News column. The Maroun family are major Republican political donors. They have lobbied against the Gordie Howe project in Lansing and Washington for years. And now, with the bridge days from opening, a presidential threat that blocks it delivers exactly what 2 decades of litigation and $30 million in political spending could not. Snyder wrote that there would be one big winner if Trump succeeded in blocking the bridge, not Canada, the Maroun family. He said picking this bridge as leverage does not make sense because the stoppage would primarily harm Americans. It was not a partisan attack. It was a factual assessment from the Republican governor who designed the agreement himself. This creates a fascinating dynamic. Trump's threat was supposed to demonstrate American leverage over Canada. What it demonstrated instead was that the most important swing state in American politics would not follow the president into a fight against its own infrastructure. Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a Democrat, was direct. Canceling this project will have serious repercussions for Michigan businesses, supply chains, and ultimately higher costs for Michigan consumers. She said Trump was punishing Michiganders for a trade war he started. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who has maintained an unusually cooperative relationship with Trump throughout his second term, did not stay quiet. Her press secretary issued a statement calling the bridge all about jobs. Good for Michigan workers, good for Michigan's auto industry, noting that Canada financed construction, union workers from both sides of the border built it, and it operates under joint ownership. Meanwhile, Michigan House Speaker Matt Hall, a Republican defending Trump's threat to reporters, mentioned that there was already a bridge owned by an American family. He suggested those owners could also be subject to retaliatory tactics from Canada. The Maroun family was being named in a press briefing about why blocking the Gordie Howe was supposedly a good idea. No one at the White House addressed the connection. No statement engaged with Snyder's column. No official explained how blocking a public bridge that benefits Michigan workers and Michigan's auto industry serves Michigan's interests better than the interests of one billionaire family that has collected monopoly tolls since 1979. The reason Michigan pushed back so hard is that the Gordie Howe Bridge solves a problem that has cost American businesses money for decades. The Ambassador Bridge was built in 1929. It is 97 years old. Its approach on the Canadian side connects to city streets in Windsor. meaning commercial trucks must navigate surface roads, traffic lights, and urban intersections before reaching the highway. That routing costs time. And time is money for every trucking company, auto manufacturer, and logistics provider moving goods across the Detroit River. The Gordie Howe connects directly to Ontario Highway 401 on the Canadian side and Interstate 75 on the American side. Freeway to freeway. No city streets, no traffic lights, no delays caused by a road network designed in the 1920s that was never meant for 8,000 trucks daily. A University of Windsor study calculated that the Gordie Howe Bridge cuts up to 20 minutes off commercial crossing times. Over 30 years, that time saving translates to $2.3 billion in reduced costs for truckers and the industries they serve. That money flows to American auto manufacturers, American agricultural shippers, American logistics companies. The efficiency gain is shared across the border. The bridge also eliminates the most dangerous vulnerability in North American supply chains. If the Ambassador Bridge closes for any reason, heavy commercial truck traffic across the Detroit River stops completely. The tunnel prohibits them. There is no alternative. A mechanical failure, a structural emergency, a protest blockade, any disruption to one privately owned aging bridge creates a commercial shutdown on a corridor that handles 25% of all Canada-United States merchandise trade. The integrated North American auto industry, where components cross the border 6 to 8 times before a vehicle is finished, would stop. Assembly lines in Detroit would go silent. Parts suppliers in Ontario would halt production. Workers on both sides would be sent home. The Gordie Howe creates the redundancy that makes both economies more resilient. Blocking it does not protect American interests, then it locks in a vulnerability that Canada and the United States have been trying to eliminate for 25 years. The human cost of Trump's blockade threat falls entirely on American workers and American consumers. Michigan's auto industry employs 185,000 people directly. Part suppliers employ another 115,000. Those 300,000 jobs depend on just-in-time delivery systems that cannot tolerate supply chain disruptions. When the Ambassador Bridge closed during the Freedom Convoy protests in February 2022 for 6 days, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis all announced production slowdowns within 48 hours. Plants went to reduced shifts. Workers lost hours. The Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association estimated that blockade cost $390 million daily for 6 days. That is $2.3 billion in economic damage from one temporary disruption to one bridge. Now imagine that vulnerability becoming permanent because Trump blocked the backup infrastructure specifically designed to prevent that scenario. While American supply chains face permanent risk from monopoly control over one aging bridge, Canadian businesses that survived Trump's threat are now positioned better than before. The Gordie Howe opening was always going to happen. Canada paid for it. Michigan owns half. American workers built it. The Ministermark and the 2012 agreement guaranteed it. But Trump's threat to block it did something the bridge advocates could never have accomplished alone. It forced Michigan's entire political establishment, Republicans and Democrats, business leaders and labor unions, to publicly defend the project and explain why blocking it harms Americans. Rick Snyder's column in the Detroit News laid out the Maroun family connection that lobbyists had worked for years to keep quiet. Michigan House Speaker Matt Hall named the Maroun family in a press briefing trying to defend Trump. The monopoly that controlled Detroit-Windsor crossings for 47 years is now publicly identified as the only winner if the Gordie Howe stays closed. That is not the kind of attention a toll monopoly wants when a public alternative is about to open. The endgame is clear. The Gordie Howe Bridge opens. 6,000 Canadians will cross it every day to work in Detroit. 8,000 trucks will move between the two countries through a crossing that cuts 20 minutes off every commercial journey. The auto industry that employs workers in both countries will have the redundant route that makes supply chains more resilient. And the Maroun family will face the competition it spent $30 million and 20 years trying to prevent. Trump threatened to stop all of that with one Truth Social post. Carney answered with 4 sentences. The bridge is opening anyway. The White House issued a statement after Carney's call, saying it was unacceptable for Canada to own the bridge fully. But Canada does not own the bridge fully. Michigan owns half. That had been stated publicly by Carney, by Michigan's governor's office, by Rick Snyder, who designed the agreement, and by every major news organization within hours of Trump's post. The White House was responding to a version of events that had already been publicly corrected multiple times. They never adjusted the statement. They never acknowledged the ownership structure. Then they just moved on to the next threat, leaving Michigan Republicans to explain why their president was wrong about infrastructure in their state. Trump's 2017 endorsement of the bridge is still public. His administration's 2019 funding authorization is still law. The 2012 agreement giving Michigan 50% ownership is still in effect. The bridge did not change. The ownership structure did not change. Michigan's economic stake did not change. The only things that changed were that Carney signed a deal with China, Ontario banned American alcohol, and Trump decided a $6.4 billion infrastructure project could be held hostage to force concessions on unrelated issues. Rick Snyder put it plainly, the bridge stoppage approach would primarily harm Americans. It makes no sense as leverage because the pain falls on Michigan workers, Michigan businesses, and Michigan's auto industry. And the one party that walks away better off is the Maroun family, which has spent 20 years and $30 million trying to stop this exact bridge from opening. Canada, meanwhile, builds infrastructure that serves its interests first, strengthens North American supply chains second, and views trade relationships through the lens of reliability. The country that weaponizes infrastructure projects is a country that does not deserve preferential access to Canadian cooperation. Carney made that calculation clear without stating it directly. He laid out 4 facts. He expressed hope for continued cooperation. He assigned a Michigan-born ambassador to smooth the path forward, and he made no concessions on Ontario's alcohol ban, no concessions on dairy protections, and no apologies for signing trade deals with Beijing. The bridge issue was separated from the trade disputes. Infrastructure is infrastructure. Trade disputes are trade disputes. Threatening to block infrastructure that American workers built and American businesses depend on to extract concessions on trade policy is not leverage. It is a strategic mistake that costs the party making the threat more than it costs the target. The irony is perfect. Trump threatened to block a bridge to pressure Canada on trade issues. He damaged his own credibility with Michigan Republicans instead. He forced the monopoly bridge owner's political influence into public view. He gave Carney an opportunity to demonstrate calm competence by simply stating facts. He made Michigan's governor, senator, and former Republican governor all defend a Canadian finance project. And the bridge is opening anyway. No concessions extracted, no leverage gained, just a public demonstration that threatening infrastructure in a swing state will produce pushback from that state's entire political and business establishment. Canada paid $6.4 billion. Michigan received 50% ownership for free. American steel and American workers were used in construction. The bridge cuts 20 minutes and $2.3 billion in costs over 30 years from supply chains that employ 300,000 Michigan workers. Trump threatened to block it. Carney corrected the record in 4 sentences. Michigan Republicans fact-checked their own president. The bridge is opening. That is not what winning looks like. That is what happens when leverage is chosen without understanding who it actually hurts. Canada built something permanent. Michigan got half for free. And Trump walked away with nothing but a Truth Social post full of factual errors that his own party had to publicly correct. Canada wins. Trump loses. Michigan wins despite Trump. And the Maroun monopoly faces competition for the first time in 47 years. That is the end game.